Welcome to the film cast. We are here to talk about bodies, bodies, bodies. I'm going to read the plot summary of this movie from IMDb. When a group of rich 20-somethings plan a hurricane party at a remote family mansion, a party game turns deadly. In this fresh and funny look at backstabbing, fake friends, and one party gone very, very wrong. End quote. I'm here with Devindra Hardawar and Jeff Kanata. I'm David Chen. Let's talk about bodies, 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 and overall thoughts. Devindra Hardawar, let's start with you. Do you like this movie? What do you think?
Sure. I love this movie. I had a lot of fun with Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Mainly because I think it is a movie that's essentially about terrible people, and that's a refrain I've heard in so many reviews. Like, terrible people. Why would I enjoy this? But I enjoy seeing terrible people destroy themselves. Like there's inherent fun to that, and I think this movie does a lot with just like who these characters actually are. Like these are rich kids having a hurricane party in a remote house, remote big fancy house in the middle of somewhere. I have very little sympathy for you folks. I think the cast all around is pretty fantastic. I think Maria Bakalova, seeing her, I don't know if she's been anything like post Borat 2, but I liked her because she is sort of like the lens of the audience. She's the innocent amongst these like really annoying folks. And it's just like a whole bunch of people from all around, right? Rachel Sinnott from Shiva Baby.
Shiva Baby. Yeah.
Yeah. Lee Pace. I love that the entire world has basically awoken to the fact that Lee Pace is fantastic. I think he's a lot of fun in this movie. He's playing like the ditzy older guy who's a part of this randomly. I've loved Lee Pace since Wonderfall. So to see him like just, get things like this, get Foundation. There was a great profile of him in GQ recently, which just really made me like the guy even more. I think he's a fantastic actor. This is a movie that's definitely about young people having annoying young people arguments and fights. But I think it all feels very real. I think the relationships between these characters feel really lived in. I just had a lot of fun with it. Like this movie always kept me guessing. This isn't a movie where I'd really go in for the kills, but I was definitely like into following everything that was happening, and it surprised me all the way to the end, to be honest. Like this movie, it's hard to have like a slasher type movie that feels fresh and surprising, but this one certainly did. So yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of this.
You can kind of read this as a sequel to the second Borat movie.
Sure.
Like why did Borat let his daughter go here?
Jeff Kanata, your overall thoughts on bodies, bodies, bodies?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my overall thoughts on bodies, bodies, bodies is best summed up in the form of a limerick. It's so much more fun than it seems, full of clever and insightful themes. If more people see it, I think they'd agree it could be this generation's Scream.
Wow.
Ooh.
That's high praise.
I feel like that goes too far.
This movie.
Yeah.
I love this movie. In fact, I'm kind of overwhelmed, guys. 2022 has been incredible for movies already. I feel like my top 10 list is already full, and we haven't even got to the part of the year where the movies that tend to be on our top 10 list come out.
It's a good sign. Yeah.
It's a very good sign. I think this movie will be fighting for a position on my top 10 list. I love it. I do think it is one of the best slasher/horror films I've seen in years. And what I said in the limerick about it being this generation's Scream, I think for my generation of the sort of 90s kids, high schoolers in the 90s, the way Scream was kind of a send-up of our behavior and our media obsession and how we were raised with media, and our psyches and our perception of the world is constantly infused with media, and the way that was expressed through Scream for the first time in a horror movie like that, and it's kind of about how that generation processes information through their cultural touchstones. I think Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is doing that about kids today. Yes, this movie is about a very particular subset of kids, i.e. wealthy, spoiled brats, basically. But I think it applies. I think these are what kids today want to be. And I think this movie makes some really insightful observations about the culture of young people and the sort of self-obsession and doing everything for the TikToks and all that stuff. And it does it in a way that is not, I don't think is heavy-handed in a way that is off-putting. I think it is clever. I think it is really using a scalpel and not a cudgel.
It's very organic in terms of how it introduces all those things. It doesn't feel like it's hitting you over the head with it. Yeah.
And the performances from top to bottom are so great. I felt like I was hanging out with those kids in that place. I never felt the artifice of a movie at any point. And I think the movie is so skillfully made, really beautifully executed. There, so much of the movie is lit by the actors, by a headlamp or a flashlight. And there's, in watching some of those scenes, if you don't really look out for it, you can miss how technical some of that is, how an actor will fall and like have to hold the flashlight up to themselves to capture it. And all of that stuff had to be meticulously choreographed. And yet it never impedes on the verisimilitude of the moment. It feels authentic. It feels real. It feels like these are improvisational moments. And there are some incredible scenes for tension, for what's going to happen next. And I'm with you, Devindra. Like, I was guessing through the end. I thought the end was a complete home run. I loved it. It was brilliant. We'll get to that in spoilers.
Great capper to this whole thing too. Like this thing that all revealed. I will say, in terms of the technical things, one thing I kept noticing is like, oh yeah, you guys are in the middle of a hurricane. You have no power, and you're wasting cell phone battery life by having your full screen brightness on along with the flashlight in the back. I was like, oh yeah, they gotta light the faces. There's no other lights. This is filmed
the real
entirely
MVP. The real MVP were those smartphone batteries in this.
Yeah,
movie.
definitely.
I think that's believable. I think that's what I think that's what people would do. It's like they're using their cell phones as flashlights. I
think Devindra and I are commenting on the fact that you would have run out of battery like in the first 2 hours of the night.
Their screens are fully white and fully lit, and you don't use your screen for that necessarily. You use the back little camera. So to see them do that, it's kind of funny. Yeah.
You would have run out of battery, David, because you're on your phone 47 hours a week or whatever. Like crazy.
I would have. Here's the most unrealistic thing about bodies. No one has one of those backup battery packs that they're just pulling the juice
Absolutely
from.
True.
Yeah. So
the other thing I want to mention too is that an incredible portrayal of podcasting and a total like skewering of podcasting, which is it just made me, this movie's funny. I was laughing out loud alone in the movie theater over and over again. It is so smart. It is so clever. I can't say enough about the performances because I believed all of those kids were in those situations and having these so much of the joy of this movie is having these kids express passionately this completely vapid concept. But they believe it. They're bought in 100%. I think this movie is great. It's a crime to me that it's not a bigger hit. I wish it was. I mean, it doesn't have the iconic ghost face type of a character that a Scream does. So in that sense, it's not able to be as culturally have a big cultural footprint because just that iconography of the face of Ghostface is a big deal.
It's probably going to have a good VOD life and a good streaming life just because there are people will actually recognize in this movie, like Pete Davidson alone. I think playing a sort of like riff on his own personality in a way too, like there's some direct jokes about him and his sex life that people like to talk about that I think were kind of hilarious. He is really good in this.
I honestly thought I was completely drawn in from the very first moment of this movie. I mean, this movie starts with this kiss, but then it pulls you into this world, and I cared about all these characters. I was constantly trying to get ahead of this movie, and it was always ahead of me. I couldn't believe how much I loved Bodies. I thought it was a fantastic movie.
It's worth pointing out the story for this, I think, came from the woman who wrote Cat Person. That story that went really viral, right? Yeah. So like it is like it has a real sense of what's going on today. It feels really very realistic.
I think horror movies can often be that, can often have their finger on the pulse of the culture, and I think Scream is a great example of that. And I think this movie absolutely captures this time in our cultural lives in our history by looking at the young people and how they behave. And I just thought it did it so skillfully and so insightfully.
A couple thoughts on the movie, and then I'd love to talk spoilers with you guys. I really enjoyed it as well. Like I liked it quite a bit. One of the things I think it does really well is capture what this party dynamic is. I don't really party like this that much anymore, but like I would
Anymore?
party.
Anymore.
I have on occasion gone to a party. And
It's been a while since you've had a hurricane party at your mansion, your parents' mansion, Dave.
it's so true. It's so true.
The
I should
last
really...
time I heard you talk about a party, Dave, was when you left a party early because they didn't serve the food fast enough. So it's like a cut from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You're the guy they were talking about at the beginning of the movie. Where'd he go? He just left.
I think I think one of the things that's great about it is like when you go to one of these parties, like it's like you don't know what the dynamic is because like all the people have different relationships to each other, and some of them are complicated. Sometimes you don't even know what the relationship is between the characters are, or between the people are, and so honestly, Lee Pace, it was just hilarious every time I saw him on screen because you have all these girls that look like they're like teenagers or in their early 20s, and then you have Lee Pace, who looks like he's an extremely attractive man, but he looks like he's like in his 40s.
He's 40 something. He's also like nearly 7 feet tall. Lee Pace is a tall man. Like he is just like this weird giant walking around these children. Yeah.
It's this amazing visual gag. And also, I have been to parties like that. I've been to parties where there's been like a girl who is with this dude that's like literally 20 years older than her. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay. And like, I don't know how I'm supposed to behave.
You do the Nathan Fielder. Oh, okay. I've definitely been to like beer garden gatherings where somebody's like, oh, my new girlfriend can't get in. She's not old enough. And then we just all have like a quiet pause. Like, yep. Okay.
So I love that the movie like captures.
I've been the 20-year-older guy, guys.
I love that the movie kind of captures that like weird, awkward dynamic. It does a great job of that.
But also of like giving you a sense of who these people are from those interactions too. Like it feels very real. Like you could start if you were a wallflower like we are watching this movie, you get the dynamics early on.
Yeah. There is, another thing. I choose not to think about this movie as like being about Gen Z. Like, there's a lot of debate. Is like, is it realistic in how it captures Gen Z? I'm not even evaluating that question. Like, I don't even honestly don't really care, because I think even setting aside whether these characters are from Gen Z or not, I still think it's a really interesting work because it's less about even Gen Z and more about what happens when you put a bunch of people with simmering tensions inside of a house together.
Yeah.
This movie is the best advertisement for A, emotions-based therapy, and B, being honest with your friends that I can ever come up with. I mean, it is basically like if everyone was just clear, honest about their thoughts about each other, and if they kind of were in touch with their own feelings and kind of their own hangups, then perhaps some tragedies could have been avoided.
Just a few.
And it doesn't. They don't have to be women. They don't have to be Gen Z. They are, in fact, in this case, Gen Z women. But like, it could be people from any generation. Could be 3 middle-aged dudes on a film podcast. Could be anyone. So anyway. I really like those.
That would be called Old Bodies, Old Bodies, Old Bodies.
Out my back.
Indeed. All right.
I called this. I walked out of this movie and I went, you know what this is? This is Clue with drugs.
Sure. And smartphones.
I love Clue. I love that movie Clue, but I love the pressure cooker. You're trapped in a place. You can't get out of that place. You have to stay in that place. Bad stuff is happening. Who done it? What's going to happen? Room to room. Where are we? Who is everybody? The movie conveys the geography of the house in a really effective way. You kind of always understand what the relationships are with the people and their locations. It's Clue plus drugs, which it turns out, not a great combo.
But you know what? Clue was always like fun and campy. It always felt like a comedy, whereas this feels like there is drama here. There's like actual interpersonal dynamics. This is basically watching a friend group implode. And if you've been around enough friend groups, you're like, oh, this is that they're going to start fighting, and this is going to be a really interesting night. And that's kind of how this kind of all goes down. So to me, just that aspect of it, it feels really realistic. And yeah, people should communicate better, but so many friend groups are built up of oh, you've been my friend since kindergarten, therefore you will always be my friend, you know, or we grew up together, or I'm secretly in love with this person, but I can't tell them. Like that is drama. Is like we cannot be radical about honesty all the time. Like we can't tell people everything. So to see how all that kind of curdles together and implodes in this movie, I think is a delight. Like to me, that is the real joy of this movie.
I also love how they all call it. Like as soon as somebody says, "Let's play bodies, bodies, bodies," they're like, "This is not going to end well." You know, like this is bad. This
somebody
is a
fights
ender.
every time.
Yeah.
I will say the one complaint I have about the movie, and I can elaborate on this a little bit more in spoilers, is like I honestly think the movie just needed a little bit more in terms of character development because there's some big turns that happen towards the end of the film that like rely on us having like a pretty clear understanding of these characters' relationship to each other that I don't think the movie fully lands. And part of it's probably like budgetary constraints. Like they want all of it's basically filmed, you know, at this house. You know, 99% of the movie's filmed at this house. So it's like they didn't want to show, or they didn't want to, or they couldn't show stuff outside of the house. And I think that really hurts the movie. But other than that, I
don't agree with that. I was never in doubt about the relationships between people, and I loved how it unraveled those as we went on through their conversations. And as Devindra keeps pointing out, the breakdown of the lie of those relationships, which is, oh, I love you more. Oh, you're the best. And then we get to the real truth of how they feel about each other.
I never liked your podcast. In fact, I've never listened to a single episode.
Yeah, so great. I mean, that I think showing that as a flashback or leaving the house to show that rather than seeing the fraying and unraveling of those relationships in real time, I think would not make for a better experience, in my opinion.
All right, let's get to spoilers, guys, right now for Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Here we go with spoilers for the movie. I think the stuff I was talking about, Jeff, just to be specific about it, is kind of at the end, the love triangle stuff, I don't think really fully works. Specifically with Sophie, B, and Jordan are the characters' names, right? At the end, there's kind of this love triangle going on, and it's just like, like, there's enough that it functions, but like it doesn't fully land for me as well as it could have. And you know, we have different opinions on that. You're saying, hey, it was fine the way it was. I'm like, I really like.
It does come out of nowhere. It does come out of nowhere.
Typically in a movie like this, you get like some scenes with the characters traveling to the place where you kind of meet them all and like get a sense of them, and like even just something like that would have added a little bit more texture and made those late stage developments feel more real.
I think it's an open question as to whether that really was a love triangle, or if it was just one character sowing seeds of doubt in another. You know, because
it's true.
She finds the bra, and she finds the bra of Jordan. Jordan's bra in the car. Like that whole thing is planted there. But what I think is interesting there is that they give you enough. You know, you see Jordan confront Sophie when they first arrive because Jordan's in the pool, and she's like, "Oh, funny seeing you here." And there's like something always like a little aggro about her. Like she's the practical one. She's the one's like, I'm going to turn on, you know, I'm going to flip off the circuit breakers. I'm going to like figure out what's going on. I'm going to drive the car. Her personality really vibes. And clearly like from the beginning, she had like, you can see it. The subtext is there. Like she punches B in the face real hard at the beginning, kind of out of nowhere, even though it's part of the game. Everyone's like, what? That's a little too much. So I think like, maybe going back, you could see the seeds of like her feelings. And Jordan strikes me as somebody who is so practical. She never lets herself like really let loose with her real emotions or something. And that's kind of what we see at the end of the movie. So I don't know. I feel like I'm really impressed at how subtle the characterizations are throughout this movie. Definitely a lot more could have been explored, but I also appreciate when a movie's just like, you watch how people talk to each other, watch how people interact, you know, and the seething rage they have with each other. And sometimes rage is actually like secret desire, you know, and that this movie, especially at the end, balances that really well. Yeah.
Well put, Devindra. I want to give a shout out to the Lee Pace killing scene. That was
good.
Really
incredible.
Just probably the highlight of the film from a execution perspective, in my opinion. Just like
incredible.
You get like every character's behavior feels understandable and justified in that situation.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of mounting terror that occurs, and like the pacing increases, you know, like It's
and how
really,
it's
really well
lit
done.
red in that room. It's lit red
It's
and
in
it's
a
creepy
gym.
and it's
Yeah.
so great. Yeah.
It's
But
really
also,
well
like
done.
you walk into that whole scene, Lee Pace is sleeping on a gym floor, and like just there's something off almost about every single scene in this movie, and like just that image of this giant man just sleeping with his
Yeah.
headphones on. Like I was cackling at that, and seeing his explanation for it and all was good. And at the end of the day, like I don't know if there was anything weird about him other than he had a go bag that had a knife in it.
No,
He was defending himself, and
the
then he
best
was
thing
killed because
about
of that. Yeah,
the best thing about that character is someone calls him a vet, so they think he was an like the story
yeah,
grows because
yeah.
no one's honest with each other. And that line where she goes, "Why do you keep calling him GI Joe? Have you seen him?" It's so great. It's like this
Well,
complete
yeah,
misunderstanding of like the fundamental nature of who this person even was.
I do
So
think
great.
Rachel Sennett got a lot of the best lines in the movie. And
Mhm,
another
mhm.
line she says with like just the most contempt. It's like she's saying almost like a racial slur. She's like,
Mhm.
your parents are upper middle class. You know, like
Yes,
it's like
so great.
it's like that's the worst thing you could say about someone in that scene. I mean,
Yeah.
all the cast is
So
amazing, but
good.
I love
And
that
I
line.
love the choice of putting the glow sticks around the neck to like so in that scene where they lock her out and you just see the glow sticks coming and locking the door. I mean, I wonder how many glow
That
sticks they went through in the shooting of this movie.
that is something that the movie did a really good job of. And actually, there's another show I saw recently called "All of Us Are Dead," I think, um, which is kind of has some similar dynamics on Netflix,
Mhm.
the Korean horror drama. But basically, like you have these, four central girls who are in this movie, women in this movie, and um, all of them are dressed very, very differently. Like so. You like visually, it's very clear who you're looking at all times, which is just like
Yeah.
you wouldn't think that
Helpful.
you would need that, but like it's very helpful when you're watching the movie. It's like, oh, I
Super
know
helpful.
exactly. One person's wearing the glow sticks around her neck, and one person
Yeah.
Mhm.
has the T-shirt on, and and so on and so forth. So level that. But of course, guys, the ending is genius, right? I mean,
Genius.
uh,
Genius.
Sure.
it's
Yes.
genius for a variety of reasons. But one of them is like obviously the reason it had really this movie is about toxic masculinity and how and how like if Pete Davidson hadn't been so wanting to be more of an alpha male type, none of this would have happened, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
And
part's
also
awesome, but
like
yeah,
yeah, go
go ahead,
ahead.
Jeff. No, you go, you go.
I mean, doing things for the Insta, doing things for the
Mhm.
Doing things for
TikTok of it.
the TikTok, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's it's so great. And it's set up early when they're like doing the dance with Lee Pace and trying to get it right and trying to and like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's I think the movie is so smart. The setups are disguised. You don't see them as setups for payoffs. Uh I love how we get to that moment where they find the phone. That's not my phone. She walks over and pulls his eyes open to get the face. It's like
Yeah.
it's so the movie is so of this moment right now. You know, it
Mhm.
is exactly a indictment of all the things that our culture is doing right now.
Mhm. It's also you bring up toxic masculinity, Dave, and sure, yeah, of course. I feel like that is like the theme to hit on often, especially when you're around dudes like this, like Pete Davidson's character. And I think he does a great job of playing an absolute asshole. But it's toxicity in all of its forms, right? It's
Yes.
toxic relationships. It's
If
toxic.
these
Yeah,
people hadn't been so wound up and had so much bitterness and resentment toward each other,
yeah.
none of this would have happened.
That's
If they'd
it.
been more
That's it. Yeah.
communicative, if they, like
Yeah.
everyone, not just the women, but the men too, like everyone involved, right? Like
Yep.
none of this would have happened.
It's a comedy of toxicity, and I also want to shout out the actor who plays Jordan, Myhala Harold. She is so good. Like I'm so sold on her. She stars in that HBO show Industry. I'm just gonna watch it now. I'm gonna start watching Industry because I
Yeah,
like her so much in this movie. So yeah.
she's a total badass in this movie.
Hmm.
I
I
love her
also
as well.
love I love how it really feels like if they had never started playing bodies the game, they wouldn't have they perhaps wouldn't have interpreted the things through the lens of we're in a horror movie.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like they behave as if they're in a horror movie because that's the mental state they put themselves in, amplified by copious substances. But it's cool that the movie gives a reason why they start interpreting actions like a horror movie protagonist would interpret them. I just thought that was clever, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You are what you pretend to be, which
Indeed.
is something that
Indeed.
Nathan Fielder has been establishing recently with his show The Rehearsal on HBO. So
I'm
Yeah.
still thinking
Any
about
other
what
fun-
you said though. Well, I'm thinking about Jeff and really like saying this is this generation Scream, and I don't know about that because for me Scream was so fundamental. Like it was such a fun like way of reshaping the way we think of slasher movies, and this is a very good one of those. I think it's a very great slasher movie. I don't know if like we've seen other things deal with like modern youth culture in terms of like is it follows a slasher movie kind of to me like that
Totally.
was like
Totally
the
it is.
most
Yeah.
recent one that was like I have never seen anything like that before, but you are definitely playing with the pieces of what makes a slasher movie so much more intriguingly than anything before it. So for me, that is my milestone. But this is certainly like a movie I will never stop thinking about. I can't wait till I can watch it at home. My wife is going to enjoy watching this movie. So it's a fun horror movie. It is that rare fun horror movie, sort of like Scream, where if you're not into the gory stuff, then you could still enjoy this. There's still so much more going on.
I agree with that. And I'll defend my comment just slightly to say the reason I frame it that way is because, you know, I think Scream is sort of saying, you know, the killer is our desire to be the star of our own fictional world, right? And Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is saying the killer is all of us. It's all of us. Someone was killed by each other person in the story. You know, there's all the girls kill somebody at some point, or, you know, and it's all because of our own flaws. Each of those girls and the secrets and the lies and the toxicity is the killer. And I thought that's what makes it so so different than anything I've seen before, is that, oh, what it's trying to say is the killer was inside us all along.
The real killer
Yeah.
was the friends we made along the way. You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's going to bring us to the end of our review of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And at the end of the day, it's really impressive that director Helena Rain made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.